Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. The Galaxy War College Shuttle Bay throbbed with pre-semester energy. Cargo haulers grappled with supplies, maintenance teams checked atmospheric systems, and around 300 of the galaxy's finest military cadets feigned composure on their first day. The station, a testament to engineering, orbited above, having honed strategic minds for over 2 centuries. Its halls echoed with the future generals, admirals, and tactical officers from 17 distinct species. Few noticed the small humans disembarking from Transport 7 Alpha. She navigated the throng with a quiet assurance, born of either profound self-belief or utter unawareness of her surroundings. Her standard uniform somehow seemed distinct on her, as if she embraced the regulations' intent over their literalness. Her dark hair, secured in a neat bun, complemented a duffel bag that appeared to have journeyed more extensively than seasoned diplomats. "Exchange student," a Catherium cadet murmured to his companion, indicating the human. "Heard they're using these primitive beings for a cultural experiment." "Humans?" The second Catherian's vocalization held a hint of amusement. "I've reviewed their profiles. They're barely beyond rudimentary technology. They probably think space combat involves colliding vessels." The human paused at the information kiosk, her gaze fixed on the holographic campus map with an intensity usually reserved for dissecting enemy formations. She traced a path with her finger, imprinting the layout, then adjusted her bag and proceeded toward the residences. Behind her, the Kytherians' conversation, less discreet than they imagined, continued. "They say the atmospheric processors had to be reconfigured just for her to breathe," one commented. "That oxygen-nitrogen mix is practically corrosive, and the gravity settings add a full Earth standard. Administration is bending over backward for a species that likely equates tactical advantage with brute force." The human offered no outward reaction, but a subtle shift in her grip on her bag suggested exceptional hearing. The residential complex boasted impressive interspecies accommodation, with environmental controls adaptable to numerous atmospheric compositions and gravity levels. Each species occupied a dedicated wing, meticulously designed for optimal conditions. The human wing, noticeably smaller, underscored Earth's limited participation in galactic military education. She located her assigned room on Level 7, Section C. The door chimed as she approached, and an automated voice welcomed her in carefully enunciated English. "Welcome, Exchange Student Taylor. Your academic schedule has been uploaded to your personal interface. Orientation commences in 2 hours. Do you require assistance with environmental controls?" "No, thank you. I believe I can manage." Her voice carried a subtle accent, a cadence that universal translators struggled to pinpoint, hinting at vast open spaces and an unyielding spirit. The room was typical military issue, functional, efficient, and entirely impersonal. A bed, a desk, a storage unit, and a small viewport offered a view of the station's immense training complex. She placed her bag on the bed and retrieved a tablet, browsing what appeared to be course materials. Advanced tactical theory, interstellar combat doctrine, strategic resource management, xenobiology, and psychological warfare. A curriculum designed to challenge cadets immersed in military strategy from infancy. She made a notation in the margin of the initial reading, then another. A subtle frown creased her brow as she selected a stylus and began sketching a radically different approach to the tactical challenge presented in Chapter 3. 2 hours later, the main auditorium teemed with incoming cadets. The orientation session, a cherished tradition, served as the administration's platform to articulate expectations, outline protocols, and instill a profound respect for the War College's mission. Dean Vortak, a formidable Zentoran with 4 arms and a reputation for reducing seasoned officers to nervous husks, surveyed the assembled cadets from the podium. His species had refined military strategy for 3 millennia, and his personal combat record included victories still studied as paragons of tactical brilliance. "Welcome to the Galactic War College," his resonant voice echoed through the auditorium. "You are here because your respective governments are convinced you possess the makings of future commanders. My role is to discern whether their faith is justified, or if you're simply products of favoritism and fantasy." A ripple of unease ran through the ranks. This very speech had ignited countless stellar careers, while extinguishing just as many before they truly blazed. "Now," Vortek continued, his voice resonating, "we welcome a unique addition to this year's intake. Embarking on our cultural exchange initiative, we're hosting our first human cadet, every eye pivoted, seeking out the human amidst the rows, her relaxed posture suggesting either supreme self-assurance or blissful ignorance. This presents unique challenges, Vorak conceded, choosing each word deliberately. Humankind's presence in interstellar affairs remains nascent. Their military philosophies are, shall we say, in their formative stages. Their comprehension of sophisticated strategies might be undeveloped. The human's hand shot up. Silence descended upon the auditorium. Never, in 2 centuries of these convocations, had a cadet dared to interrupt the dean's opening address. Some species lacked even the capacity for such audacity. Yes? Vorak's voice could have frozen a sun. I apologize, sir, but I seek clarification. When you mention our developing military philosophies, are you referring to our theoretical frameworks or practical applications? The question lingered, a loaded weapon in the air. Vorak's multiple eyes narrowed, processing her challenge. I fail to grasp the distinction you're making, Cadet. Well, sir, theoretical frameworks can be limited by the scope of past conflicts. Doctrines reflect those boundaries. However, practical application, that crucible where real strategies are forged in the fires of combat, is something else entirely. The auditorium held its breath, the only sound the hum of the ventilation system. Several cadets looked as if they were witnessing a live disciplinary action. Are you suggesting, Vorak intoned carefully, that human military strategies might surpass established galactic doctrines? Oh no, sir. I'm not presuming superiority. I'm simply questioning whether assuming that newer equals less effective is an adequate assumption. Vorak stared, a long moment stretching into an eternity. Then, to everyone's astonishment, a smile touched his lips. It was not warm, but neither did it signal the immediate end to her fledgling career. Interesting perspective, Cadet. I eagerly await to see how you apply such reasoning to your studies. The rest of the orientation unfolded without further incident, but the damage, or perhaps the miracle, was complete. Whispers spread through the cadet body faster than a hull breach. The human had not only interrupted the dean's speech, but had somehow steered it towards a discussion on the very nature of military thinking. As the session drew to a close, she had been branded by her peers. Some deemed her foolishly reckless. Others saw brilliance, or perhaps genuine madness. A few entertained the thought that she was part of some elaborate administrative exercise. Oblivious, she studied her course schedule with a focused intensity mirroring that she had shown with the campus map. Excuse me? A voice resonated behind her. Turning, she found an Andromedan cadet, tall, with crystalline features, 3 arms, and an air of nobility and exceptional training. Cadet Zephy, he announced, offering the formal bow of introduction. I wish to introduce myself. It's rare to encounter one from a species so new to our community. It's a pleasure, she responded, extending a human handshake. The Andromedan looked momentarily confused, then tentatively offered one of his arms in return. I was wondering, he continued, if you'd be interested in joining our study group. We meet twice weekly to analyze tactical scenarios and discuss strategic implications. It might prove educational for both of us. She paused, considering. What type of tactical scenarios? Primarily historical engagements. The Siege of Kepler-7, the Vegan Nebula campaign, the 3rd Century conflict, classic examples of interstellar warfare and fundamental principles. Sounds fascinating. What are your thoughts on the Kepler-7 siege? Zephy straightened, clearly at ease in this realm of discourse. A masterful example of strategic patience. The Hijgamani forces demonstrated unparalleled foresight, orchestrating a 3-year blockade that compelled the enemy's surrender without a single shot fired. The human made a non-committal sound. Their dialogue, somehow, still managed to convey a gentle disagreement. You perceive it differently. Well, I haven't fully delved into all the specifics yet, but based on my current understanding, the blockade's success hinged entirely on the defenders lacking crucial intelligence regarding the hegemony's supply lines. Had they recognized the sheer overextension of the siege fleet, they could have initiated a breakout at virtually any moment during the initial 18 months. Zephy's delicate crystalline features shifted, a subtle flicker that might have betrayed surprise or perhaps a touch of offense. That isn't how the engagement is typically evaluated. Perhaps not, but that's precisely what the figures reveal. Sustaining a 3-year blockade necessitates immense logistical fortitude. The hegemony had to meticulously maintain supply lines stretching across 4 distinct systems, all while keeping their fleet rigidly in place. This isn't strategic patience, it's audacious strategic gambling. Its success relied solely on the fact that no one dared to call their bluff. The Andromedan remained still for a beat, absorbing this profoundly different interpretation of what was widely regarded as one of galactic history's most significant strategic triumphs. "You should absolutely join our study group," he finally declared, as they commenced their walk toward the residential complex. Neither of them registered the hushed gathering of cadets who had, by chance, overheard or overheard their exchange. Whispers were already circulating through the student body. The visiting human student had, with effortless grace, lauded military campaigns in galactic history, presenting it as if it were mere elementary arithmetic. The War College's academic complex was intentionally crafted to evoke a powerful blend of awe and subtle intimidation. Its vast halls showcased intricate holographic displays of legendary battles. Its corridors were adorned with the solemn portraits of renowned military leaders, and its classrooms were equipped with sophisticated tactical simulators capable of meticulously recreating any conflict recorded in galactic history. Professor Yanthara had dedicated 47 years to instructing advanced tactical theory. She had encountered cadets from every prominent species, navigating every imaginable military mindset, from the meticulously analytical to the daringly inventive. Her inaugural class, each semester, invariably followed the same format: a thorough exploration of the foundational theories that formed the bedrock of all contemporary military strategy. She was 3 minutes into her opening lecture when the human entered. "My apologies for the delay, Professor," the human stated, settling into a seat near the classroom's center. "I encountered some difficulty with the navigation interface." Yanthara paused, her 6 eyes scrutinizing the newcomer. She had naturally reviewed the pertinent files, the college's very first human exchange student, representing a species so recently introduced to galactic affairs that they had not even developed faster-than-light travel when first contact was established. "Not at all, Cadet. We were just initiating a discussion on the fundamental tenets of strategic analysis." She gestured toward the complex diagram of force deployment patterns displayed on the holographic screen behind her. "As you can observe, the paramount step in dissecting any military engagement is to first meticulously identify the principal strategic objectives of each involved faction." The human offered a slight nod, producing a tablet and stylus. While she began diligently taking notes, Yanthara observed that the human was also subtly sketching in the margins. Judging by the appearance, they were alternative deployment configurations. "Now," the professor continued, "can anyone identify the single most critical element when evaluating tactical superiority?" Several hands promptly rose across the room. Yanthara directed her attention to a Catharian cadet positioned in the front row. "Numerical advantage, Professor. Superior numbers afford the capacity for multiple simultaneous approaches and greater strategic flexibility." "A common presupposition," Yanthara acknowledged, "but not invariably accurate. Anyone else?" A Zentaran raised 2 of their forelimbs. "Technological superiority. Advanced weaponry and defensive systems can effectively counterbalance numerical deficits." "Also true in numerous instances," Yanthara confirmed. "Any other perspectives?" The human raised their hand. Yanthara hesitated for a moment before inclining her head. "I believe it depends entirely on the specific objectives," the human responded. "If the objective is resource acquisition, then numerical and technological advantages hold considerable weight. However, if the struggle is for sheer survival, the most vital factor is likely comprehending what the opposing side deems impossible." The classroom fell into a profound silence. Yanthara's extensive teaching experience had not, in any way, prepared her for such a response. "Could you perhaps elaborate on that, Cadet?" "Well," the human began, "the vast majority of military doctrine is predicated upon assumptions of rational conduct. You anticipate your adversary to act logically, to make decisions guided by cost-benefit analyses, and to circumvent unnecessary risks. Yet when the fight is for survival, those very assumptions transform into vulnerabilities. A desperate opponent will inevitably undertake actions that defy conventional strategic logic, and if one is unprepared for such eventualities, all your superior numbers and advanced technology will prove utterly insufficient." Yanthara regarded the human intently for a prolonged period. Throughout the classroom, other cadets exchanged glances ranging from bewilderment to a palpable sense of unease. "Are you suggesting," the professor inquired with deliberate care, "that irrational behavior constitutes a valid military strategy?" "No. It is not irrational but unpredictable for the Catharian cadet from the front row to shift in his seat, for there is a fundamental difference. Irrational conduct is haphazard and self-defeating, while unpredictable conduct is a calculated deployment of actions that fall outside your enemy's established decision-making paradigm. Yet such unpredictability cannot form the bedrock of military doctrine, for it inevitably breeds chaos. Or does it instill fear in your adversaries because they cannot accurately gauge the risks? The classroom ignited with debate. Some cadets insisted military strategy demanded predictable frameworks, while others posited that unpredictability was merely a sophisticated form of psychological warfare. A few even questioned whether the human was describing strategy or sheer madness. Professor Yanthara found herself in the extraordinary position of having completely lost command of her classroom. Yet rather than annoyance, she felt a profound fascination. In 47 years of teaching, not a single remark had ever sparked such a fervent theoretical discourse. "Very well," she announced, her voice rising above the clamor. "Let us test this hypothesis. I shall present a tactical scenario, and I require you to unravel its strategic implications." The holographic display transformed, revealing a star system adorned with 2 planets, 3 asteroid belts, and a labyrinthine configuration of military forces. It was a quintessential problem from the curriculum, a scenario long employed to hone strategic thinking. "The predicament is as follows," Professor Yanthara continued. "The defending forces are outnumbered 3-1 and possess meager supplies. The attacking fleet wields superior technology and boasts multiple approach vectors. By conventional strategic analysis, the defenders ought to surrender. Nevertheless, they have elected to fight. Your task is to discern their most probable tactical maneuver and devise a counter-strategy." Cadets across the room began activating their tablets, accessing strategic databases, and initiating probability calculations. The human, however, remained fixated on the display for a mere 30 seconds. "Time," Professor Yanthara declared after 15 minutes. "Let us hear your analyses." The Catherian cadet spoke first, offering a meticulous breakdown of probable defensive positions and advocating for a systematic approach to neutralizing them. The Zenuran followed, presenting a technological analysis aimed at exploiting the defenders' inferior weaponry. Several other cadets contributed variations on similar themes. "Cadet Taylor," the professor addressed the human, "your assessment?" She looked up from her tablet, upon which she had been sketching what appeared to be an entirely disparate tactical situation. "I do not believe they seek to win," she stated. The classroom fell silent once more. "I beg your pardon," Professor Yanthara interjected. "The defenders. I do not believe they are attempting to secure victory in this engagement. I believe they are striving to instill in the attackers a dread of facing the next one." She stood and moved towards the holographic display, her finger indicating several positions that other cadets had identified as critical weak points. "Observe their deployment. They are not endeavoring to safeguard their planets. They are meticulously orchestrating the cost of their acquisition. Every defensive position is engineered to inflict maximum casualties before succumbing. They are not fighting to triumph. They are fighting to ensure that every entity in the galaxy comprehends the repercussions of their aggression." The human traced a path through the asteroid belts with her fingertip. "They will likely forfeit 90% of their fleet, perhaps both planets. However, the attacking force will endure such grievous losses that no other will dare to contemplate a comparable engagement. This is not about the present conflict. It is about the subsequent 10 conflicts that will never transpire, because everyone will recall the exorbitant price of this one." Professor Yanthara found herself gazing at the display with an entirely new perspective. The scenario, employed for decades, had always hinged on the fundamental assumption that the defenders aspired to survival. But if that assumption were altered, that is not how the exercise is intended to function, one of the cadets interjected. "Perhaps not," the human replied, returning to her seat, "but that is likely how the war operates." As the class concluded and the cadets departed, Professor Yanthara remained by the display, scrutinizing the tactical scenario she had presented countless times. For the first time in her distinguished career, she began to question whether her ingrained assumptions about rational military behavior were as universally applicable as she had always supposed. The human had already departed, but her tablet lay open on the desk. The professor cast a glance at it, revealing detailed notes on the lecture alongside sketches of alternative strategic frameworks that bore no resemblance to anything she had encountered in her 47 years of teaching military theory. At the bottom of the page, inscribed in a small, precise script, was a single potent line. "Perhaps the question is not how to win wars, but how to prevent them from occurring in the first place." Professor Yanthara stood there for a long moment, her gaze fixed upon that profound statement. Then a seismic shift was brewing. She resolved to revolutionize her curriculum, igniting change. The War College's morning briefing contained an anomaly unseen in 2 centuries. Monitor human exchange student, potential security risk. Dean Vorak, perplexed, scrutinized the notation. How had one cadet triggered such concern in mere hours? Reports from Professor Yanthara's class were unprecedented. 3 independent accounts detailed how the human casually dismantled established military doctrine, proposing alternative strategic visions, either genius or madness, perhaps both. Sir, Zixtal, his Kithaeron aide, a whirlwind of nervous energy, materialized. Strategic analysis demands an urgent meeting regarding the human exchange program. Urgent how? Vorak queried. The unprecedented and immediate evaluation kind, sir. Vortak's forearms moved, a gesture of weary resignation. Schedule it, and get me Earth's complete military history. Olivitzer's abridged version, all 1423 pages. 3 hours later, Vorak understood. Earth's military history was a bizarre tapestry of tactical brilliance born of desperation, strategic choices defying logic, and improbable victories. Galactic military theory fails to explain them, reported Colonel Thrinks, chief strategic analyst. Faced with overwhelming odds, human doctrine devolves into controlled chaos. They abandon predictability for approaches we struggle to categorize. Insane? Vorak suggested. Disturbingly effective, sir. Zixtal burst in, radiating frantic energy. Sir, the humans in advanced strategic theory. Professor Keldron is experiencing an intellectual crisis. Vorak's face clouded. Keldron, a legendary theorist, his textbook's gospel throughout the galaxy. An intellectual crisis implies fundamental shifts in military understanding. What transpired? She solved Kepler-7, sir. Silence engulfed the room. Kepler-7 was the War College's unsolvable problem, a tactical exercise designed to highlight the limits of strategy, not to be conquered. Solved it? Vorak asked incredulously. In 20 minutes, sir, and the preliminary analysis suggests it's correct. Vorak shot to his feet, chair crashing behind him. Live feed, now. The holographic display flickered, revealing Professor Keldrotaran's class. The human, surrounded by cadets, looked like they witnessed a miracle, or pending doom. You see, she explained, pointing to a diagram. This scenario assumes you must fight the battle presented. But what if you refuse? Professor Keldron, a distinguished Zentoran, silver-gray skin radiating centuries of military wisdom, stared with an expression Vorak had never witnessed. It was the look of a reality shattered. Cadet Taylor, the professor began slowly, are you suggesting we ignore Kepler-7? Not ignore it, reframe it. The problem's premise, trapped in a losing situation with limited resources, is the trap itself. Stepping back, the strategic context reveals other options. She indicated her solution, clean, precise diagrams. Instead of fighting an unwinnable battle, you alter the engagement's very nature. A Catherian cadet raised his hand, bewildered. But that's not how strategy works. You can't change the rules, can you? A hint of genuine curiosity touched the human's voice. Who wrote those rules? And why assume the enemy will obey them? The classroom erupted. Some cadets championed established frameworks for military strategy, while others argued the human was discussing psychological warfare, not tactical analysis. A few questioned if her proposals bordered on war crimes. Professor Keldron silenced the room and asked Ged Taylor to detail her solution. For 15 minutes, she articulated her approach to the Kepler-7 scenario, elegant, ruthless, and utterly alien to existing tactical literature. Instead of engaging the battle as presented, she'd fundamentally reshaped the strategic landscape. Her core insight, she explained, was that the scenario presupposed fighting for territory. But what if the fight was for information? What if the true goal wasn't to secure the system, but to glean everything possible about the enemy's capabilities and deliver that intelligence to those who could act upon it? Vorak observed the display in his office, a profound unease growing within him. The human's solution wasn't merely correct. It represented a strategic paradigm shift, capable of revolutionizing warfare itself. Sir, Colonel Thrink's voice was carefully modulated. Should we be concerned? Before Vorak could reply, his communication system chimed with an urgent dispatch from the Galactic Defense Council. Its subject line reading, Request immediate evaluation of human strategic capabilities. I believe, Vorak stated slowly, we may have already moved beyond mere concern. That evening, the study group convened in Conference Room 7, a modest space overlooking the War College's primary training complex. What began as a casual academic exchange had morphed into something akin to a high-level military intelligence briefing. Skith 3 is writing the textbooks, Zephy declared, pacing the room. Not metaphorically, literally. Professor Keldrondon has spent 3 hours revising his lecture notes. It's not confined to strategic theory, added Vexera, an Andromedan cadet. She's impacting every class. Professor Yanthara has overhauled her entire curriculum. The Xenobiology department is seeking supplementary funding to investigate human psychological warfare capabilities, and Professor Stelnov in resource management, another cadet chimed in, has been posing questions regarding Earth's industrial capacity that are unsettling the administration. Zephy stopped pacing, turning to face the group. I've been analyzing her solutions to standard tactical problems. They aren't just different, they emanate from an entirely distinct cognitive framework. It's as if she's playing an entirely different game. The question, Vexara interjected, is whether she's aware she's doing it. A profound silence fell upon the room as the weight of that statement settled in. If the human was consciously demonstrating superior strategic acumen, it was an intellectual display that would compel the galaxy to reevaluate humanity's standing within the interstellar community. However, if this was an unconscious manifestation, if this was simply humanity's innate approach to military problems, the implications would be far more alarming. We require more data, Zephy finally stated. I intend to propose a joint exercise, something that will allow us to observe her real-time tactical decision-making under duress. What kind of exercise? Inquired a Catheran cadet, the kind that typically breaks people. The following morning, news cascaded through the War College like a critical hull breach. The human exchange student had submitted a research paper that was inducing what could only be termed institutional panic. Titled Asymmetric Warfare in Post-Scarcity Societies, a Theoretical Framework for Conflict Resolution Through Strategic Unpredictability, the paper comprised 37 pages of mathematical proofs, historical analysis, and tactical theory that read as a revolutionary manual for interstellar warfare. Professor Yanthara found herself in the peculiar predicament of dreading the grading of a student's work. She had perused the paper 3 times, consulted with 2 colleagues, and subjected the mathematical models to the War College's most advanced strategic analysis computers. The findings were consistent and deeply unsettling. The human had devised a theoretical framework capable of predicting the outcomes of military conflicts with an accuracy rate surpassing any known in the field. More critically, she had identified systemic vulnerabilities within galactic military doctrine that could be exploited by anyone possessing a sufficient grasp of the underlying principles. This is not a student paper, she informed Dean Vorak in his office that afternoon. This is a strategic analysis that could fundamentally alter the conduct of warfare across the galaxy. Vorak perused the executive summary, his expression darkening with each word. Her conclusions suggest that most established military powers are susceptible to specific forms of asymmetric assault, not just susceptible. Professor Yanthara corrected him, exposed and utterly defenseless. Her analysis laid bare a terrifying truth. The current galactic military, meticulously honed for symmetrical conflicts between advanced civilizations, was catastrophically vulnerable. It was utterly unequipped to face adversaries who, like humans, dared to defy conventional tactical logic. Yes, apparently. But what truly unnerved him was her casual acceptance of this radical deviation. The paper itself felt disturbingly mundane, an unadorned outline of strategic principles rather than the groundbreaking, almost heretical, military theory it represented. Vorak carefully placed the paper down, his gaze drifting towards the sprawling training complex visible from his office window. Below, hundreds of bright-eyed cadets, unaware of the tectonic shift unfolding, drilled relentlessly, their entire future military careers predicated on strategic doctrines that might now be fatally obsolete. How long, he murmured to himself, before other species grasp the same terrifying epiphany she had unveiled? That depends, Professor Yanthara replied, her voice hushed, on their willingness to shatter 2 centuries of entrenched military doctrine and embrace what currently appeared to be pure, unadulterated chaos. And if they do, she continued after a heavy silence, then we face nothing less than a cataclysmic reordering of galactic military power. Humanity, whether they comprehend its full implications or not, has just irrevocably cemented itself as the most strategically vital species in all of known space. That evening, a comm signal from the Galactic Defense Council flashed across Vorak's console, blazing with the highest security classification. The message was stark, almost chilling in its brevity. Immediate consultation requested regarding human strategic capabilities. Prepare detailed analysis of potential security implications. Vorak stared, his mind reeling. Everything had irrevocably shifted. This human exchange student wasn't merely challenging dusty academic theories. She was manifesting an operational reality, unveiling capabilities that threatened to utterly reshape the delicate balance of power across the entire galaxy. And tomorrow, ironically, she faced her advanced combat simulation. The day's final class always pushed cadets to their absolute limits. Advanced combat simulation, a crucible of real-time tactical decision-making, was designed to relentlessly stress-test every ounce of their theoretical knowledge. The holographic combat arena was a marvel, meticulously recreating any battle from galactic history with flawless physics, brutally realistic damage models, and an almost unbearable pressure that ruthlessly winnowed future military leaders from potential casualties. Professor Dartek, the notoriously unforgiving simulation instructor, possessed a legendary talent for shattering even the most iron-willed cadets. His exercises were infamous for their labyrinthine complexity, their brutal ruthlessness, and their chilling, absolute indifference to ego or established reputation. "Today's exercise," he intoned, his voice resonating through the hushed classroom, "will be a stark, modified recreation of the infamous Vegan Nebula campaign. You will command a minuscule fleet, confronting truly overwhelming odds. Your solitary objective is brutally simple: survive for 30 minutes against a vastly superior enemy force." A ripple of nervous energy, bordering on dread, swept through the cadets. The Vegan Nebula campaign wasn't just famous. It was a byword for catastrophic, lopsided defeat in galactic military history, the defending fleet having been utterly annihilated in less than 15 minutes. "Cadet Taylor," Professor Dartek stated, his gaze fixed, "you have the first simulation." The human nodded, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, and stepped into the shimmering command hologram that coalesced around her. The tactical display sprang to life, starkly illustrating her meager fleet of 12 vessels arrayed against a monolithic enemy force exceeding 40. The odds, by any rational analysis, were not just stacked, they were an insurmountable wall. "Simulation begins in 10 seconds, Professor Dartek's voice cut through the tension. "Remember, your objective is merely survival, not victory." What unfolded next would echo through military academies and strategic discussions for generations. Instead of engaging the vastly superior enemy, the human executed a maneuver that didn't just bend doctrine. It brutally shattered every principle of space combat. She scattered her fleet, not with any discernible strategic or tactical logic, but by dispatching her 12 ships in 12 wildly divergent directions, abandoning any pretense of coordinated defense or mutual support. To the stunned cadets, it appeared nothing short of suicidal, a direct contravention of every lesson they had ever absorbed. "What in the void is she doing?" an observer gasped, the whisper barely audible. "She's condemning them all to oblivion," another choked out, disbelief warping his voice. But then, an astonishing counterpoint. As the enemy fleet predictably lunged to pursue the seemingly panicked scattered ships, they found themselves agonizingly stretched across an impossibly vast volume of space. Their overwhelming numerical superiority, the bedrock of their power, became utterly meaningless, as they could not bring their concentrated firepower to bear on any single, elusive target. The human ships, far from running randomly, were executing an intricate, unpredictable pattern, creating a tactical quagmire that no one in that room had ever witnessed, much less conceived. "She's not attempting to win," Professor Dartek breathed, his voice a tight blend of profound admiration and creeping horror. "She's systematically making them lose." By the time the 30-minute simulation concluded, the enemy fleet was not merely scattered, it was utterly fragmented, their commanders boiling with frustration, their formidable power rendered impotent, their objective completely unachievable. The human fleet, though having sustained casualties, had undeniably survived. More profoundly, they had demonstrated, with devastating clarity, that a supposedly invincible enemy force could be utterly neutralized by tactics that simply did not exist within the hallowed pages of any known military manual. The classroom remained cloaked in stunned silence as the simulation concluded. and the human calmly exited the holographic command station, appearing as if she'd just finished a light workout. "Fascinating scenario," she remarked to Professor Dartrick. "Is that derived from historical conflicts?" "Indeed," he confirmed, his tone carefully measured. "The Vegan Nebula campaign. The defending fleet was utterly annihilated." A heavy silence fell. "A shame," she murmured. "If they'd abandoned conventional warfare tactics, they might have actually survived." With that, she gathered her things and departed, leaving behind cadets grappling with the unsettling realization that their preconceived notions of strategy might be their undoing. Professor Deltek remained by the tactical display, fixated on the simulation data. After 3 decades of instructing combat strategy, he was speechless. Yet according to the human, her solution was simply common sense. At 3:17 hours, the emergency faculty meeting commenced, a time that was either impossibly late or unreasonably early, depending on the circadian rhythms of the assembled species. Dean Vorak had called it after a flood of incidents, 17 reports, 4 formal complaints, and a chilling resignation letter from Professor Darth. "I refuse to teach tactics rendered obsolete." "The crisis has escalated beyond expectations," announced Dr. Cathuras, the chief academic officer, his voice tinged with urgency. "We're receiving inquiries from the Hegemony Defense Ministry, the Andromedan Strategic Command, and even the Catherian War Council. They demand detailed reports on the human exchange students' capabilities." Colonel Thrax scoffed, a bitter sound. "Capabilities? She's proving everything we thought we knew about war is fundamentally wrong." The holographic display projected a compilation of the humans' work over the past week. Mathematical equations that reinvented fleet deployment, analyses that revealed gaping holes in cherished victories, and tactical solutions that defied established principles. "The core issue," Professor Yanthara observed gravely, "is that she's doing it unintentionally. She considers this basic military logic. She's not consciously attempting to rewrite warfare. These are just elementary principles to her." Dean Vorak activated a cultural analysis report that caused visible discomfort among department heads. "Our xenopsychology team studied humanity's war history," he stated. "Their findings are alarming." The report painted humanity as systematically disregarding rules of engagement. They didn't simply think outside the box. They were oblivious to its existence. Human military doctrine dictates that any conflict worth fighting is worth winning by any means possible, Dr. Sentheris added. They lack concepts like honorable defeat or acceptable losses. Their framework revolves around survival, justifying tactics other species find unthinkable. "That's not strategy," Colonel Threnax argued. "That's pure instinct." "Precisely. And instinct is unbound by rules." A sudden alert interrupted them. "Urgent communication. The human has volunteered for the impossibility exercise." Silence descended on the conference room. The impossibility exercise was the War College's ultimate test, a scenario designed to teach the limits of strategy. No one had ever succeeded. "She volunteered?" Dean Vorak questioned, disbelief coloring his tone. "She overheard other cadets discussing it and requested to participate," Professor Meltar clarified. "When I explained it was designed to demonstrate the limits of analytical thought, she expressed increased interest." The faculty hurried to the observation deck. The impossibility exercise displayed 3 star systems under siege, supply lines severed, forces outnumbered 50 to 1, and superior enemy technology, no reinforcements, and no hope of retreat. "The objective," Professor Melthar explained to the human at the command interface, "is to minimize casualties while achieving any remaining strategic goals." "What strategic goals?" she inquired. "That is part of the exercise. You must determine what objectives are realistically attainable, given the constraints." She scrutinized the impossible scenario for precisely 47 seconds. Then she executed an action the simulation designers hadn't programmed for. "I surrender," she announced. "On behalf of all factions involved, I declare this conflict resolved. All forces will stand down immediately, pending negotiation of surrender terms." Professor Melthar stared. "You can't do that. You're not authorized to surrender enemy forces." "Who says I'm not?" she countered. "The scenario provides no limitations on command structure. If I can command my forces, and enemy forces operate within the same framework, they should respond to the same protocols." The simulation paused, struggling to process a condition it couldn't predict. After a long moment, it redefined the exercise parameters. Simulation failed. Framework breached. "She unraveled it," a voice breathed. I didn't unravel it, she countered. I solved it. The flaw wasn't in the tactics, but in the very concept. The program insisted on perpetual conflict, a premise never actually mandated. Professor Mailer sank into his chair, stunned. In my 73 years, I've never seen someone attack a problem by questioning its existence. She shrugged. Isn't that the obvious first step? If you're handed the impossible, shouldn't you first ask if the question itself is flawed? Understood, Taylor? Dean Vorak's voice crackled over the intercom. Report to my office immediately. There, Vorak activated displays showcasing a week's worth of alarming reports. In 7 days, you've challenged 3 departments, forced 2 professors to overhaul their curricula, and shattered a century-old simulation. I didn't shatter it, she corrected. I found a solution its creators never envisioned. Precisely. You keep finding effective solutions, yet they undermine the strategic principles we teach. Maybe, she suggested, the problem isn't the solutions, but the principles themselves. Vorak felt the weight of centuries of military tradition pressing down on him. Are you suggesting that the strategic doctrines that govern the galaxy are fundamentally flawed? Incomplete, she clarified. They work for symmetrical conflicts, but crumble when confronted with unexpected variables. Variables like humans, like anyone daring to question whether rules are requirements, or simply suggestions. An urgent message flashed from the Galactic Defense Council, its security markings reserved for moments of crisis. Is Earth planning to weaponize these insights? She looked genuinely taken aback. Earth doesn't even know about them. I'm an exchange student, not a spy. But you'll return with this knowledge. Presumably, she agreed. Is that a problem? Vorak realized she truly didn't grasp the implications. This knowledge could irrevocably alter the balance of power. You're worried humanity might use what I've learned to gain a military advantage? The possibility exists, Vorak admitted. That's not really how humans operate, she said, smiling faintly. We prioritize preventing wars over winning them. My principles are centered on conflict resolution, not escalation. The Defense Council demands a complete evaluation of your capabilities, concerned about security risks. What kind of evaluation? The kind that determines whether humanity poses a threat to galactic stability. For the first time, a shadow of concern flickered across her face. Dean Vorak, she said quietly, I think we might have a problem. The final examination was designed to break even the most seasoned generals. 5 hours of impossible strategic scenarios. She completed it in 47 minutes, offering solutions so revolutionary they redefined the very language of warfare. When the Galactic Defense Council offered her the unprecedented position of Supreme Strategic Advisor, she politely refused. Thanks, but I'm looking forward to my sophomore year at a small liberal arts college. 6 months later, the War College quietly renamed its Strategic Studies building. The plaque read, in honor of contributions to galactic military science. Nobody wanted to explain how a human exchange student had inadvertently become required reading at every military academy across known space.